Hello, 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 and welcome to the latest installment of And Sarah Appeared. My name is Sarah, and I'm appearing before you right now because, I'm about to watch the actual Chris Rock special. I hadn't watched it. Honestly, I have to jump on the Chris Rock special and the Marlon Wayans special because I'm really psyched about the fact that Marlon is doing stand-up. I'm a huge fan of Damon Wayans Senior stand-up because I was a bad tail little kid, and I had the passcode to my grandparents' cable, so I used to put in the passcode and bypass literally the highlight 1 a.m. in the morning, the highlight of my Saturday night, Sunday morning before I would go to church is watch the adults say dirty words and cuss and just laugh. And so that was my introduction to Damon Wayans Sr. and the stand-up monster that he is. So I'm really happy to be watching Marlon because I've never experienced watching him with stand-up. But his brother, yeah. Anyways, with that being said, I'm very familiar with Chris Rock's stand-up. I mean, watching his stand-up on HBO, his specials as a kid were really they were a part of my childhood. They were the highlights. And a lot of people are just upset. They have a lot of feelings, mixed feelings, mixed emotions. They feel a type of way about his special. And then some people feel like that his special shouldn't have garnered him $20 million. Here's my thing. I'm tired of people, and I understand with platforms like Netflix, there is censorship that you have to have. But I have to be honest with you. When somebody is processing, going through emotions, or they just have the wherewithal to get their lick back in a non-physical way, why is that something that is reprimanded? Didn't this man literally turn the other cheek after he, had that incident happen? Now, if you're like me, when I first seen it, until this day, I feel like this was it feels like something that was staged. It doesn't feel like it was real. But I'll take it at its word. Mr. Chris Rock said it was real. Mr. Will Smith acknowledged that it was real. Okay. I don't feel like, one, there was anything derogatory or out of the way to garner that kind of response out of Will Smith. However, I do understand that when you under pressure and when things happen, when you under pressure, things happen. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Is that the way he should have responded to Chris Rock? No. But I don't think it's also right for us to dictate how Chris Rock should process his creativity. Chris Rock was literally processing emotions and what he wanted to say based off of a really dumb, stupid, crazy incident that happened. And I'm pretty sure that he's cordial with the Smiths, but now the relationship is kind of weird, very awkward. It's very awkward. And I think when we look at this, we have to look at how we process the right hooks of life. And honestly, I understand. Let me tell you something. I'm a Chris Farley fan, so you'll never hear me go against Chris Rock, ever. I'm tired of people saying that Chris Rock makes comedy for white people. Let me tell you something. There's a difference between black comedy and white comedy, but comedy is comedy. And what people don't understand when they say he shucks and jives for white people, I have seen Chris Rock produce a sitcom about his life, and he had a starring role of 2 black African American parents. Everybody watched Everybody Hates Chris. And not only that, but it was black people who were giving their money to his platform through viewership, but it was also white people who was doing it too. Why? Because those same white people who were in college, in grad school, running around the streets of wherever they were. They grew up watching Chris Rock and Chris Farley and Adam Sandler and Dana Carvey and all the others of the Rat Pack of the 90s. They literally grew up watching him. And that's because of the platform that he was on. That's just like, that's how black people are so, and Chris Rock just actually happened to have talent. He actually has talent. And that's no difference to how black people are forever, like, we're forever going to ride for Jim Carrey. Why? Jim Carrey was on In Living Color. A black man, Keenen Ivory Wayans, gave Jim Carrey the opportunity to be on Living Color, and he was one of the biggest stars that ever came out of Hollywood. Jim Carrey is versatile, can do anything, and it was a black man that gave him his start, Keenen Ivory Wayans. And he's crossover. And so just like Jim is crossover, Chris is crossover too. Because Chris Rock went out there on his HBO specials when I was a kid in the 90s. And I was a kid that was kind of like in this colloquial church traditional upbringing. But I had this like middle class, very vanilla, like white suburbia neighborhood that I grew up in. However, I had an experience to some extent with like family members who didn't grow up in that, and it was just like I had blended experiences. And so watching Chris Rock's specials as a young kid, being like 5 and 6 years old, watching it on HBO when I shouldn't have been, and then turning around and seeing him at 10 or 11 play the first black president of the United States. And you know he got my heart because my favorite comic, Bernie Mac, is like his wingman, his brother, in the movie. And then turning around again and seeing the backstory to how Chris Rock became so crossover by watching his blended upbringing when he was growing up in Brooklyn with his family. It gave me more of an understanding of who he was and where he was coming from. I just don't understand art imitates life. Everybody hates Chris. I really don't understand it. I don't understand it. Everybody hates Chris. When you're going through the motions and you're trying to process your feelings about something that happened with people that you actually have a relationship with in real life, not no tabloid stuff. Because one thing that we have to remember is these are stars and actors and actresses that literally came up. And this is what happens in the black community. Even though our chitlin circuit today is a lot more advanced with a lot more paper, every black or brown actor, actress, comedian, whatever, has had a chitlin circuit that they've stepped into. Your chitlin circuit might be social media at first, but everybody goes through that circuit. And so what I saw was black icons who I knew, who I saw cross over in different films, act with each other, play roles with each other. I saw black icons literally have careers that were expanded along timelines with one another. So these are not people who just, they don't know each other, they don't affiliate. They know about each other. And so when you have a relationship with somebody where there's commonality there, it does hurt. It hurts when you're in a relationship with somebody and they do something like foul like that. And it's like, why did you get up in front of everybody and just slap him like that? What was the point of doing that? And then in return, Chris gets further backlash because it's like, well, why'd you got to get up on stage and do a stand-up about it? And then people are even more mad because they're like, they paid you $20 million to vent. Yeah, because that's what comedy is. Comedy, comics, real stand-up comedians who actually go on the road, who actually do shows in between movies and everything else like that. Podcasts, real comics, the way that they get their material is they put it on the road. They get up on stage or they get a platform, and the things that cause them pain in real life is something that they perform out of. Give him his 20 million and add tax to it. He been acting. He been doing movies. He gave us Everybody Hates Chris, and everybody complains about black representation. This was before Blackish came out. This is before all of this. In the middle of the 2000s, Everybody Hate Chris came out, and it was like revolutionary because we hadn't seen black representation in a positive light on cable network TV since the 90s. Since like 98. And so in the middle of the 2000s, when that hits, it's like, oh my God, a breath of fresh air. And it's relatable, and it's got different groups of people in it. So I don't know. The animosity is very weird. It's very weird. People are saying, oh, well, he shouldn't have never put his mouth on her or said this and that. Let me tell you something. Jokes should not be censored, and comedy shouldn't be censored. In everyday life, people are going to say things about you that are going to hurt your feelings. It's not what they say, it's what you answer to. And yes, it gets hard. And yes, it does hurt your feelings when people do say certain things, but that's life. And if somebody does something to you and you turn around and talk about them and got something bad to say about them, then that's life too. I don't know where we get this. Where do we come up with all these rules? This man is allowed, whether you believe it or not, I still think it's a hoax, but he's allowed to get slapped on a public forum, on a public scale. He's allowed to get slapped, but he's not allowed to talk about it. Like, you got to make that make sense. He's allowed to get slapped, but he can't talk about it. But y'all all saw it. And y'all even get to comment and saying whether the slap was justified or not. But he can't express how he feels with two people who he mutually knows in the industry. Some of them he probably even couch surfed with at one point. He mutually knows them in the industry. They kids could have went to little summer camps or whatever together. They both got money. They both is bi-coastal. And he can't say nothing about that? It is selective outrage. And it's time out for that. And yeah, I don't care what it is. I'm glad that they gave him the cool 20 million. Let me tell you something. It was a lazy attempt of having a conversation to be able to and address somebody man to man when Will Smith slapped him. But so Chris Rock took a lazy attempt to get $20 million. And honestly, that's how everybody is looking at it. But really, when you processing emotions and feelings, whatever you say is what you say. You just can't be mad. Because let me tell you something. Chris Rock is the type of stand-up comic where he would have took it to the nearest hole-in-the-wall bar that had a 10-minute mic. He would have took it anywhere. And shout out to Mr. Rock too, because he also volunteers at the same place I volunteer at, and he puts on shows at the same place. So shout out to Chris, like shout out to Mr. Rock. Like, that's pretty dope. Especially like the volunteer service that he did at the Midnight Mission. Like, shout out to him. They gonna get on you for that too. But let me tell you something. When you a real comedian or when you a real comic, you make whatever platform your stage, because that's how you heal through the stuff that you actually go through. And so you guys just saw a raw cut the fat off the meat, a raw basically performance of how. Sorry, we had a quick intermission. But what I was going to say before I wrapped up, you guys just basically saw a raw performance of how Chris felt about the situation. And Netflix jumped on it to give it to him because it's business. It's things that go on behind the scenes. And people who have a problem with that, you got to look at everything that the man has done in his film career, in his stand-up, whether he's, however you feel about him or not, I don't know. I really don't care. I like the performances. Give respect where respect is due. Give respect where respect is due. Like, yeah, they threw 20 million at him. Yeah. Selective outrage.